For 20 long years, the city carried a silent wound. Inside the shining hospital wing built with billionaire money, a woman lay motionless. Machines hummed. Nurses passed quietly, but no voice came from her lips. Her name? Lydia Cole. Once she was more than a name. She was rhythm. Not the rhythm of fame or money, though she had both after marrying Adrian Cole, one of the wealthiest men in the country. Lydia was known for something far simpler, something every child in the city carried in their hands, their claps, their laughter. A beat, 332, the 332 rhythm. She had stood on playgrounds with a drum across her shoulder, teaching children how to clap it out. 332. Teachers swore it calmed restless classrooms. Parents said it helped their little ones fall asleep. The rhythm spread like wildfire, until even toddlers and strollers could tap it. It wasn't just music, it was magic woven into childhood itself. And Lydia? She never cared for fame. She only cared for joy. But joy does not stop tragedy. One rainy night, headlights cut across her path. Tires screamed, metal twisted. And by morning, headlines screamed louder. Drum queen of children fights for her life. She never opened her eyes again. Adrian, the billionaire husband, poured everything into saving her. Doctors, machines, private wings, experimental therapies. But years passed and hope burned out like a dying candle. One by one, he sent visitors away. One by one, he locked doors. Grief made him cold, and the woman he loved became only a shadow breathing through tubes, and yet her rhythm never died. In schoolyards and living rooms, the 332 lived on. Parents taught it to toddlers. Teenagers tapped it on desks. The beat became tradition. A city's way of saying, we remember her. But the woman herself? She remained still, silent, trapped in a body that refused to answer. Until the day a new maid arrived at the hospital. She came not with riches or power, but with her little boy. A boy who carried nothing more than a small toy drum. And unknowingly, he carried the key to the miracle the world had given up on. Because sometimes it isn't billions that wake the silent. Sometimes it's the smallest beat in the smallest hands. Zuri had been working at the hospital for only 3 months, but she already knew the unspoken rule. Never go near the billionaire's wife. Staff whispered about the pale woman who hadn't opened her eyes in 20 years. Some called her a legend, some called her a curse. For Zuri, she was simply another room to avoid while scrubbing floors. But her son Micah didn't know those rules. At only 5 years old, he was small, curious, and stubborn. Wherever his mother went, the boy carried a little blue toy drum strapped across his chest. The red strap cut diagonally over his shirt, and 2 wooden sticks clicked against the plastic shell as if the rhythm inside him could never stay quiet. Micah, hush, Zuri whispered one morning as she changed linens in a ward. Not here. People are sick. But Mama, he murmured, tapping gently. I'm not making noise. I'm talking. Zuri frowned. Talking? He nodded earnestly. With rhythms. You said Miss Lydia made a song that everyone knows. I think songs can talk. Zuri's heart ached. She had grown up with the 332 rhythm herself, clapping it on desks in school, teaching it later to Micah like every parent did. But to her it was just tradition. To him it was magic. That afternoon, while Zuri scrubbed a sink, Micah slipped away. His small sneakers squeaked down the quiet hall, past signs that read authorized personnel only. He paused before a heavy door. The forbidden room. His tiny hand pushed it open. Inside, machines hummed. The smell of antiseptic hung heavy. On the bed lay the woman from his mother's stories, Miss Lydia. Her blonde hair, now streaked with gray, spread across the pillow. A clear tube fed air into her nose, and the monitor beside her beeped with cold indifference. Micah whispered, Miss Lydia. No answer. He climbed onto the step by her bedside, balancing the drum against his knees. He lifted his sticks. 3, 3, 2. The pattern echoed softly through the room. From the doorway, a sharp voice cut through the air. Hey, you can't be in here. A doctor stormed in, clipboard under his arm. His eyes narrowed at the boy. Get down this instant. She's in a coma. Don't bang toys in here. But Micah didn't flinch. He leaned closer to Lydia's face and whispered, If you hear me, blink on the last 2. The doctor froze, his irritation faltering into disbelief. What did you just say? Micah tapped again, 3, 3, 2, and then it happened. For the first time in 20 years, Lydia's eyelashes trembled. The clipboard slipped from the doctor's hands, clattering to the floor. His voice cracked. No, that's just a reflex. It has to be coincidence. Micah didn't stop. His small hand struck the drum again, steady and insistent. Miss Lydia, it's your song. Blink again if you know it. 1 blink, 2. Perfectly timed. The doctor staggered back, his face pale. Dear God. Just then, footsteps thundered from the hallway. Zuri rushed in, a towel still in her hand. Micah, I told you to stay. She stopped, staring at the monitor, at the boy, at the woman on the bed. What's happening? He's getting a response, the doctor stammered, clutching at his stethoscope as if it could explain the impossible. This isn't possible. She hasn't moved in 20 years. Zuri's heart pounded. She grabbed her son's shoulder. Micah, what did you do? He pointed at the woman, eyes wide and innocent. You told me she taught everyone. I just played her song. In that moment, the room no longer felt cold or lifeless. It pulsed with something unseen, something fragile but undeniable. A boy's toy drum had just shaken the silence of 2 lost decades. The door burst open. Heavy footsteps thundered across the polished floor. Adrian Cole, still in his dark tailored suit, entered with the fury of a man who had lost too much already. What is all this noise? He snapped, his voice sharp enough to slice the silence. His eyes fell instantly on the boy perched by the bed, toy drum balanced on tiny knees, sticks in hand. For a moment, Adrian's face twisted in disbelief, then anger. Who let a child in here? Sir, the doctor began, but Adrian raised a hand, cutting him off. Remove him now! No! Micah shouted, his small voice ringing louder than the machines. Everyone froze. Adrian's brows knitted, his jaw tightening at the audacity. She's listening, the boy insisted. Adrian's chest heaved, his anger colliding with something deeper, fear maybe, or grief too long buried. He stepped forward, towering over the child. Don't be ridiculous. She hasn't responded in 20 years. Get out before you... And then it happened. Lydia's right hand twitched just once, but perfectly in time with Micah's drumbeat. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. His eyes shot to the monitor, then back to her face. He hadn't seen movement in 2 decades, not since the night he'd begged her to wake up. His knees nearly buckled against the bed rail. No. His voice cracked. No, it can't be. Micah, undeterred, lifted his sticks again. He tapped the rhythm firmly. 3, 3, 2. On the last 2 beats, Lydia's eyelids lifted and blinked. Purposeful, direct, undeniable. The room went dead silent except for the beeping monitor. Adrian stumbled back, pressing a trembling hand over his mouth. Lydia. The name escaped him like a prayer he had stopped saying years ago. Dear God. The doctor, pale and shaking, scrambled for words. Mr. Cole, this is... I need to run a neurological check. If this is consistent, if she can repeat this, then she's minimally conscious. This is historic. Adrian barely heard him. His eyes were locked on his wife's face, his heart thundering. It means she's still here. His voice broke into a whisper. I thought I lost her, but she's still here. Zuri, standing frozen near the doorway, clutched Micah close. She had scrubbed these halls for survival, never dreaming her child could be the reason a billionaire fell to his knees. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, Micah, what have you done? Her son simply said, I played her song. She knows it. Adrian turned, his face wet with tears he had long sworn he'd never shed again. He gripped the boy's small shoulders and knelt so they were eye level. For the first time, the steel mask of a billionaire cracked into raw humanity. Son, Adrian whispered, voice trembling. You gave me what, billions of dollars? Hundreds of doctors and 20 years of pain could not. You gave me back my wife. Micah blinked, shy but firm. I just wanted her to hear. Adrian pulled him into a hug, ignoring the awkward drum pressed between them. His body shook as he held the child, his voice breaking. No, you did more than that. You gave me back my life. The doctor cleared his throat, still rattled. We'll need intensive therapy, neurology, physiotherapy, speech, but this changes everything. If the city learns she responded to rhythm, to the 332, it will change how we approach every patient like her. Adrian rose slowly, his grief-worn face transforming with something dangerous and beautiful. Hope. He turned toward Zuri, his voice steady but filled with awe. Your son has done the impossible. From this day forward, he is not just a boy. He is my wife's drummer. Zuri's knees weakened. The billionaire, the man untouchable by the world, had just placed her son at the center of his shattered, reborn universe. At that moment, Lydia's lips parted. A sound so faint the machines nearly swallowed it. But Adrian heard. He bent low, desperate, tears dripping onto the sheets. Her cracked lips shaped a single word. Beat. Adrian's body collapsed against the bed, sobs racking through him as he clutched her fragile hand. "I hear you, Lydia," he whispered, pressing her fingers to his face. "Dear God, I hear you." The doctor's voice shook as he scribbled frantically in his notes. This is the first purposeful speech in 2 decades. We have to document everything." But in that room, medical history didn't matter. Wealth didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was a child's drumbeat, a woman's first word, and a man's broken heart finding light again. Micah tightened the drum strap across his chest, lifting the sticks once more. "Don't worry," he said softly, as if promising her. "I'll play for you again." And Lydia, eyes glistening with new life, blinked once, twice, on beat. Morning sunlight poured through the wide hospital windows, bathing the sterile room in a glow that felt different, warm, alive. Nurses who had once walked these halls without hope now moved with quiet urgency, whispering to one another as though history itself was unfolding within those 4 walls. News had spread faster than wildfire. Somehow someone in the ward had seen Lydia's eyelids open, her lips move, her hand twitch in rhythm to a child's drum. By dawn, whispers had traveled beyond the hospital. By noon, the story was breaking headlines across the city. Billionaire's wife awakens after 20 years. Miracle drummer boy saves heiress. Cole family secrets finally unearthed? Reporters swarmed the hospital gates, cameras flashing, microphones ready to capture the impossible. Inside, Adrian Cole stood by his wife's bed, his hand never leaving hers. For 20 years he had been a fortress, unmovable, untouchable, feared by markets and men alike. But now he looked smaller, human, almost fragile. Every tear he shed was caught by a world hungry for spectacle. Lydia's recovery was still fragile. Her body trembled from the effort of blinking. Her lips cracked when she whispered, but she was there, and that was enough. The doctor's team confirmed what the world already knew. Lydia Cole had shown purposeful responses after decades of silence. The rhythm, a simple 332 beat, had unlocked something no medicine could. At the center of it all stood a boy of 7, clutching his toy drum. Micah blinked at the bright lights of cameras, his small shoulders shrinking under the weight of sudden fame. Zuri kept him close, shielding him from the chaos, though her heart swelled with both fear and pride. That afternoon, Adrian called for a press conference. The grand hospital atrium was transformed into a stage. Reporters pressed shoulder to shoulder, camera lenses glinting like 1,000 unblinking eyes. At the center, Adrian stepped forward, no longer in the shadow of his grief, but in the rawness of his truth. He wore no mask this time, no armor of wealth or arrogance. His voice, when it came, was steady but laced with emotion. For 20 years, he began, I lived as a man buried alive. My wife, Lydia Cole, was trapped in silence, and His voice broke for a moment. He drew a deep breath and continued. I believed money could save her. I hired the best doctors, funded the most advanced research, built entire wings of hospitals in her name. But none of it brought her back to me. The crowd leaned forward, pens scratching furiously, cameras clicking like thunder. And yet, Adrian said, turning toward the boy standing at his side, a child with nothing but a toy drum gave her what billions could not. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scrambled to adjust their microphones toward the small boy clutching his drum. Micah glanced nervously at his mother, who nodded with trembling hands. Adrian placed a hand on Micah's shoulder. This boy Micah played the rhythm that reached my wife. His music became the bridge between silence and speech, despair and hope. He is not just a boy. He is proof that miracles do not come from wealth or power, but from innocence, courage, and love. The room erupted in applause, flashes exploding like fireworks. Adrian raised his hand, quieting the crowd. His eyes, though red from sleepless nights, shone with a new kind of strength. From this day forward, the Cole Foundation will fund a global research initiative into rhythm-based therapy. We will create programs for every family who has been told there is no hope. And Micah, he paused, looking down at the boy, Micah will be the face of that movement. Zuri's breath caught. In one moment, the world had shifted. Her son was no longer just a janitor's child. He had become the symbol of a miracle. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Cole, will your wife make a full recovery? Is this boy now part of your family? What does this mean for the medical community?" Adrian held up Lydia's fragile hand, the crowd silencing instantly. She blinked once, twice on cue with Micah's soft tapping. The message was clear. She was fighting her way back. The press conference ended, but the story did not. Across the world, headlines screamed of the miracle. Families with loved ones in comas clung to new hope. Doctors began testing rhythm therapy in other hospitals. The world had changed overnight. Back in Lydia's room, the chaos melted away. Zuri sat by her son, who was finally free to rest. Adrian remained at Lydia's side, his fingers brushing against hers like a vow renewed. "You brought her back to me," he whispered to Micah as the boy drifted to sleep, the drum resting by his side. "And I swear to you, I will never forget what you've done. You saved her. You saved me." For the first time in decades, the Cole mansion would no longer be filled with silence. For the first time, Adrian's heart beat in rhythm again, with hope, with music, with love. And Lydia, eyes closed but alive, seemed to smile faintly, as if hearing every beat of the drum echoing her return. The hospital days that followed were unlike anything anyone had imagined. Lydia Cole, once frozen in silence for 2 decades, was now slowly waking from her endless sleep. Progress was measured in tiny victories, a blink on command, a weak squeeze of Adrian's hand, a faint smile when Micah tapped his drum. Doctors marveled at her resilience. "Her body should have wasted away years ago," one whispered. "It's as though something, or someone, held her here waiting." Adrian knew the answer. He saw it every time his wife's eyelids fluttered to the rhythm of the boy's drum. It wasn't medicine. It wasn't billions of dollars. It was a song. Their song. On the 3rd week after her first response, Lydia's lips moved. No one was sure at first if it was intentional, but when Micah played softly, she whispered, "Again." The room erupted. Adrian fell to his knees, clutching her hand to his forehead, sobbing openly for the first time in years. Nurses cried. Even the stone-faced doctors couldn't contain their awe. Each day she grew stronger. Her voice, fragile as glass, returned word by word. Adrian spent hours by her side, reading to her, recounting every year she had missed. He told her about the companies he built, the charities in her name, the nights he spent talking to her, though she couldn't answer. But it wasn't just Adrian she wanted to hear from. When Zuri entered one morning with Micah, Lydia's eyes followed them. Her lips curved faintly. "You," she whispered to the boy. Micah nodded shyly and tapped the drum. 3, 3, 2. Lydia blinked in rhythm and then, with effort, whispered, "Thank you." Zuri covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. Her son had done the impossible. For years, Adrian Cole had been seen as untouchable, a titan of business, a man whose wealth built walls between him and the world. But Lydia's awakening changed him. He no longer arrived at the hospital in motorcades. He walked the halls like every other husband, nodding at nurses, thanking janitors, listening to doctors with humility. He often sat quietly beside Zuri, watching Micah tap the drum. Where once he might have ignored them, now he treated them as family. One evening, Adrian approached Zuri. His eyes, once cold steel, now shone with sincerity. "You came here to scrub floors," he said softly. "But you gave me back my wife. From now on, you'll never scrub another floor in your life." Zuri shook her head, overwhelmed. "Mr. Cole, I don't want—" Adrian raised a hand. "Not charity. Partnership. I'm establishing a foundation in Lydia's honor, and I want you and Micah at the heart of it. Together we'll bring rhythm therapy to every family who's lost hope." Zuri's knees nearly buckled. The janitor's uniform she wore suddenly felt like borrowed clothing. For the first time in her life, someone with power saw her not as invisible, but as essential. Within months, the Micah Rhythm Project launched. Hospitals worldwide adopted rhythm therapy. Families who had stopped believing began to try again, tapping rhythms on drums, on tables, on their loved ones' hands. And sometimes, just sometimes, miracles happened. Micah became a symbol of hope. Magazines called him the boy who woke the sleeping lady. Scientists studied the rhythm's neurological impact. But most people preferred to believe in something simpler: faith, love, and music. Wherever Micah went, strangers would kneel to thank him. Zuri often kept him close, afraid of the world's hunger, but she also understood his gift was no longer theirs alone. It belonged to everyone who needed hope. A family reborn back in the Cole mansion, laughter returned for the first time in 20 years. Lydia, though still weak, was home. Adrian carried her wheelchair through the garden she had once loved, describing every flower as though seeing them together for the first time. Micah visited often, his little drum never far from reach. He became Lydia's favorite companion, his songs coaxing smiles and sometimes even soft laughter from her lips. One quiet evening, as the sun melted into gold across the estate, Adrian stood with Zuri on the balcony. "I spent years thinking wealth was everything," he confessed. "But it couldn't give me what your son gave me in a single rhythm." Zuri glanced at him, eyes shining. "Money builds walls. Music built a bridge." He nodded slowly, humbled. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure that bridge carries others too." Months later, during a private celebration, Lydia surprised them all. Micah tapped his familiar rhythm, and instead of just blinking, Lydia's voice, still raspy but clear, rose to finish the song. The melody that had once been only memory now filled the halls again. Adrian froze, tears streaming freely as he clutched her hand. Zuri wept openly. Micah laughed, banging the drum in joy. The music was not perfect. It was halting, broken at times. But it was alive. And in that moment, no mansion, no hospital, no billion-dollar empire could compare to the priceless sound of a wife, a mother, a legend returning. Recovery was never easy. Lydia's body, dormant for 20 years, resisted every command. Her muscles cramped, her voice broke, her fingers trembled with each attempt to write her name. But every time she felt herself falter, Micah's drum reminded her why she was fighting. 3, 3, 2. Again, she would whisper, sweat on her brow, voice hoarse but determined. Adrian never left her side. The once hard-edged billionaire became her most patient caretaker, feeding her, encouraging her, cheering at every tiny step. For the first time in his life, power and wealth were useless. Only love mattered. At night, Lydia often wept into Adrian's chest. 20 years gone. How do I live with the time I lost? Adrian kissed her hair softly. You didn't lose it. You gave it back to me the moment you blinked. We start again, Lydia. From now. If Lydia was learning to live again, Micah had become her teacher. Every morning, he tapped his drum beside her wheelchair. He didn't treat her like a patient or a fragile relic. He treated her like a friend. Come on, Miss Lydia, he would grin. If I can run up the stairs, you can move your hand, and she did. Slowly, painfully, but she did. Doctors called it unprecedented. Adrian called it a miracle. Lydia called it Micah's song. Zuri, watching her son's bond with the woman once thought lost, felt a pride that could not be measured. Her little boy, born in struggle, raised in scarcity, had done what no fortune could do. News of Lydia's progress had spread far beyond the hospital walls. Cities lit up with murals of drums painted on walls. Schools incorporated the 332 rhythm as part of daily learning. Families gathered at dinner tables to clap it together. It was no longer just a game. It was a symbol of life's ability to return from silence. At a massive gathering in the city square, Adrian and Lydia appeared together for the first time in 2 decades. She sat in a wheelchair, pale but smiling as the crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed. Children beat on drums in unison. Adrian raised a hand, but it was Lydia who spoke into the microphone, her voice faint but steady. Do not stop playing. Music brought me home. Music will bring hope to others too. The square thundered with applause. Parents held children tighter. Some cried openly. For a city that had mourned her for 20 years, seeing Lydia alive was proof that no silence lasts forever. Back at the Cole mansion, Adrian gathered his advisors. For decades, his fortune had built skyscrapers, oil refineries, and luxury resorts. Now he had a different vision. All of it, he declared. Every resource I have. From today forward, we invest in music therapy, rhythm research, hospitals, and families in despair. Money built my empire, but this, he looked at Lydia, then at Micah, this builds life. His board members stared, stunned. Some argued it was too risky, too costly. Adrian silenced them with a single sentence. My wife came back to me because of a child's drum. Don't tell me what's impossible. For Zuri, life shifted overnight. From a janitor scrubbing hospital floors, she became a partner in the foundation Adrian created. At first, she resisted. She feared pity. She feared being seen as a charity case, but Adrian treated her as an equal. He often said, "You held hope when I couldn't. You kept the rhythm alive through your son. Without you, Lydia would still be sleeping." For the first time, Zuri stood tall in rooms filled with power and influence, and she realized something profound. This miracle was not just about Lydia. It was about every mother, every child, every family who needed hope. 6 months later, a global summit was held in New York. Leaders, scientists, musicians, and doctors gathered. On the grand stage, Adrian introduced Lydia, now stronger, her voice clearer, and beside her, Micah with his drum. The boy tapped the familiar rhythm. The entire hall responded, clapping in unison. Presidents, CEOs, professors, and janitors, all bound by the same beat. Lydia closed her eyes, tears streaming. For 20 years, I lived in silence. Today, I hear the world sing with me. Never underestimate the power of a child, a song, and love that refuses to give up. The applause shook the building. The world was listening. One evening after the summit, Lydia sat in the garden wrapped in a blanket. Micah curled beside her, drum in his lap. Adrian stood behind her chair watching the stars. "Do you know what you did, Micah?" Lydia asked softly. The boy shrugged. "I just played the song my mom taught me." She smiled faintly, squeezing his hand. "No, you gave me my life back, and you gave the world hope." Adrian bent down, placing a hand on Micah's shoulder. "And you'll always be part of our family, not because of what you did, but because of who you are." Zuri, standing quietly nearby, felt her chest tighten with gratitude. She had scrubbed those hospital floors to survive, never knowing destiny was preparing her son to save lives. The story that began with a billionaire's tragedy, a maid's struggle, and a child's drum was no longer theirs alone. It belonged to the world. And with every beat of 3, 3, 2, humanity remembered. Hope can sleep for 20 years, but it only takes one song to wake it again. The Cole mansion was alive again. Laughter echoed in rooms that had once felt like tombs. Lydia's voice, still fragile but steadier each day, carried warmth through the halls. Adrian no longer lived as a prisoner of grief. Zuri and Micah had become part of their daily lives, not as staff but as family. Yet beneath the joy, Lydia carried something unspoken. One evening, after a long therapy session, Lydia asked to see Micah alone. Adrian hesitated but agreed. The boy entered her sunlit room, drum strapped across his chest as always. "Sit with me, little drummer," Lydia whispered, patting the chair beside her. Micah climbed up, wide-eyed, waiting for her to speak. For a long moment, she just studied him, the spark in his eyes, the innocence in his smile, the rhythm in his small hands. "You know," she said slowly, "when you played that rhythm for me, I heard it. Not faintly, not by chance. I heard it inside a place where no one believed I could. I was lost in darkness, Micah, and then your song pulled me out." Micah grinned proudly. "Because 332 is yours. My mom taught me it." Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, but there is something you don't know." Micah tilted his head, curious. Lydia reached for his hand, her touch trembling. "Your mother, Zuri, she was one of my first students." Micah blinked. "What?" "Yes, 20 years ago, before the accident, I visited schools. I taught children the rhythm. Zuri was just a girl then, no older than you. She was quiet, shy, but her hands had perfect timing. She learned 332 from me." Micah's mouth dropped open. She carried it with her all these years, and when she taught it to you, she wasn't just passing on a game. She was passing on me. Micah hugged his drum tight, his little chest rising and falling quickly. "So when I woke you, it was because of Mom too?" Lydia nodded, her tears spilling. "Yes, Micah, you and your mother both saved me. Without her, you wouldn't have known the rhythm. And without you, I wouldn't be here now." Unseen, Adrian had stopped in the doorway, listening. His eyes widened with shock, then softened with awe. All this time, he had credited only the boy, never realizing Lydia's life had been tied to Zuri long before fate made her a maid in his hospital. When Lydia finished, Adrian entered the room, voice thick with emotion. Then it wasn't chance. It was destiny. Zuri wasn't just here to clean floors. She was meant to return you to me. Micah looked between them, confused but proud. So, my mom's part of your song too? Adrian knelt beside him, placing a hand on his small shoulder. Your mom has always been part of this story, and from now on the world will know it. That night, Adrian gathered Zuri, Lydia, and Micah together in the Great Hall. For the first time, he told the full truth to the staff and family gathered there. Lydia's rhythm touched the city long ago, but it was Zuri who carried it forward, and it was Micah who brought it back to her when the world thought it was gone. This miracle is not mine. It belongs to them. Zuri, overwhelmed, tried to protest, but Lydia reached for her hand. You were my student. Now you are my sister. Never forget that. The hall fell silent, heavy with emotion. For the first time, Zuri saw herself not as a servant in someone else's story, but as a thread woven into its very heart. Later that night, Micah tapped his drum softly as Lydia drifted into sleep. Adrian stood by Zuri's side, voice low. Do you see? He whispered. This wasn't just about money or miracles. It was about connection. You carried Lydia's legacy unknowingly, and your son completed it. You are part of my family now, forever. Zuri's throat tightened, tears brimming. For years she had lived unseen, cleaning in silence. Now she was standing in the center of a story that belonged to the world. And as Micah's soft rhythm filled the night, Adrian and Zuri shared a single thought. This was only the beginning.